The following podcast is a deep, shallow dive production.
And you're gonna love it.
Okay, let's go.
All right, so before we get started, I have to give you a shout out. And the shout out is I've said your name like 100 times on the podcast ever since our episode together, because every time I delineate between a liberal and a leftist, I say, thanks, Greg Stoker. And so, hey, everybody, Greg Stoker is back.
Well, glad to be here as the dirty leftist political ambassador to talk shit on liberals.
Yeah,
thanks
absolutely.
for having me.
I love it. The dirty leftist political ambassador talking shit on liberals and conservatives, which we realize now are one and the same. So, all right, listen, today's going to be great because normally when I bring a guest on, we're talking about something from the past or whatever. But today I've got a guest and we're literally going to talk about exactly what's going on right now. And that's the LA riots with these ICE riots. I want to get your opinion on Palantir and all of, the surveillance things that feel like the Patriot Act is coming back, digital version 2.0. And then I really want to get you to help us understand what I'm seeing, which is they're trying to mesh the Palestinian movement with this Mexican anti-immigration movement and almost turn it into one. So why don't we start with the LA ICE raids? I mean, give us your thoughts.
Well, okay. So first of all, there's a reason it's happening. Like I don't know whatever your audience's thoughts are on the immigration issue, whether you think it's a problem or it's not, whether you're a border abolitionist or someone who's like, we need to have more regulations of people coming into this country. It doesn't matter. The reason it's happening in LA is because LA is the cultural center of like the Hispanic migrant immigrant population. And they feel like if they can break LA, they can break every other city in the country. So it's the focal point for everything that's happening. Plus, Trump has had beef with California since the 80s, it being like this, like really liberal democratic state, even though there are large pockets of conservatism in California. It's a sanctuary state. LA is a sanctuary city. The MAGA and the conservative base hate the neoliberal Democratic Party that runs California, which I do too. I get it,
Yeah.
But that's why it's being focused on there. I mean, there's also, I live in Texas. It's a border state. There's also a bunch of other ICE activities, but there's not the same focus because Greg Abbott is an ally of Trump. Texas is a more conservative state. So you're not going to see the same type of policing like this. So they're trying to ratchet down on force. And it's not really going to work. That's the big takeaway. And it's driving people from like the left of the political spectrum and the right to be like, hey, this kind of looks like authoritarianism in conjunction with his military parade that's happening for the first time for a U.S. president in honor of his big boy Mussolini birthday is having a military parade. I'm in D.C. right now. We've just watched an entire armored brigade get rolled in on trucks from Texas. They're laying steel plates down along the streets because, tanks crush sewage pipes. They tear up asphalt and concrete. So they're laying down metal plates for his military parade. And people on both sides, all parts of the political spectrum are like, this looks troubling. This is bad. Maybe we should start getting involved before it's too late.
I really didn't even know what's going on with his birthday parade. So he's throwing a military birthday for himself.
I mean, he says it's for the Army's birthday, but no, it's for him. And he said today, it was on Fox News in the Oval Office, if there's any protests, we're going to come down with, quote, very big force. So, of course, I'm here in D.C. with a bunch of other veterans organizations who are like bipartisan, apolitical, generally just deal with veterans issues, and an authoritarian takeover is a veterans issue. So we're here to experience the big force. But yeah, it's all part, what we're seeing now, Palestine, ICE, military parades is all part of the same system.
Yeah, I think so too. Let me ask you this. So Trump federalizing the National Guard in California, to me, it seemed like like he pulled the trigger so fast on that it felt like it was premeditated and done for the wrong reasons. Like he shouldn't have done that, right? There was no reason to.
Well, yeah, it's generally okay. So, like when natty guard troops are federalized, they have different like operational parameters than when they're called in by the governor on a state level. So, yeah, they're actually kind of really, unless he calls in the Insurrection Act, they're actually have their hands tied. Like beyond like guarding federal property, they can't really do much. So they wanted a big round number of 2,000 troops, right? And of course, I've got buddies on the ground in LA who I'm talking to is like only 300 of those 2,000 troops are deployed because they're really limited in what they can do right now. So like you got 1,700 dudes just laying in an abandoned gymnasium doing nothing because, they really didn't have orders. They don't really know what
That's
they're
interesting.
doing. Yeah.
So when he federalizes the National Guard, they can only do things to protect federal buildings and federal related things. Is it possible that he did that so they can't be out there and then they let the mayhem, I guess, ensue a little bit more? Like to me, it almost feels like the 2020 BLM playbook, but now it's the red GOP version. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, well, first of all, it's a show of force. He's doing it just to do it. Like 2,000 guys aren't going to make a difference because all of LA is up in arms. There aren't enough cops and there aren't enough troops to send. And 2,000 National Guard, like, brigade size element getting mobilized, like that's a significant force. There's not the reason it's 2,000 is they can't mobilize more than 2,000. I live in Texas. The Texas National Guard, when they mobilize 3,000 people to the border, it's a logistical nightmare for the Guard. And because there's just not a lot of natty Guard troops, even in big states like Texas and California, which is one of the reasons why they're sending a frigging Marine battalion, 500 Marines. And if there's one thing I know about Marine infantry battalions is they're really good at de-escalating the situation. So this thing's getting really out of hand. It's confused. I know for a fact that like all the military commanders that are involved in this are like, what are we doing? What's our guidance? What are our orders? And so this is why this kind of crackdown that's happening in LA is not going to work. And they're actually really scared about it because they realize that there's just not enough cops and there's not enough soldiers. And every time there's an uprising, that's been one historical truth through the entire history of human civilization. There's never enough soldiers to put down a popular uprising. And so they can't even handle LA. What if the rest of the country explodes? So I guess the corollary to like BLM, it does kind of remind me of that, with the exception of it's way more intersectional than BLM was. It involves a couple of different issues and activist groups outside of the Black Lives Matter movement, but this one is completely different. You got environmentalists taking to the streets. You've got the Palestine crowd showing up. You've got the Stop Cop City crowd showing up. Even the Black Panthers are involved in this one too. So as a leftist, I'm just like, good. Class consciousness, intersectionality. We're like people on the right, people on the left, realizing that we're just getting absolutely fucked by the entire system. That we have this great saying. I love it. Activists mobilize against issues like BLM, but revolutionaries who want something different organize against systems. So the same violence that is being enacted and first tested on Palestinians through imperial feedback is being used on U.S. citizens. And that's what we call the imperial boomerang theory. So people are starting to connect the two things. Like, I'm always frustrated by the American voters' like unwillingness to really care about foreign policy issues. But now people are starting to make the connection. It's like, wow, now that we've allowed Israel to do a genocide and shoot journalists without any compunction, we're now seeing like cops literally just shooting journalists with rubber bullets because they're journalists. Like, we allow this impunity to happen overseas, of course it's going to come back home to roost. And so people are starting, there's kind of like this intersectionality happening, and it's really cool. And it's like nonpartisan at all, because people are realizing, the same reason you can't pay rent is why children are being starved to death in Gaza.
Yeah. I saw a female journalist. I don't know who she was reporting for, but she got hit like with a stray rubber bullet the other day.
Well, it wasn't a stray. No.
It wasn't a stray.
No, if you examine the footage, cop lined up the sights and intentionally shot at her.
Man, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that when I talk about impunity against journalists, it's like Israel's really set the standard that's empowered all these cops, many of whom were trained by the IDF to like act like they have been acting. So now it's going to happen to U.S. citizens. Of course, not as blatantly, but it's only going to get worse for us.
Yeah, yeah. So you made a great point earlier about Los Angeles obviously being the mecca and hub for the Hispanic and really the Mexican community. I mean, it's huge out here. So you think they did this on purpose? They did the ICE raids in LA on purpose to I guess test it out, or what do you think?
Well, to test it out, but also to wage war on the Democratic establishment.
Okay, okay.
Because like California is a big bastion of the liberal ruling corrupt elites.
Yeah,
And I'd be all for that if, the Republican Party wasn't as equally corrupt and part of the
yeah,
same
yeah,
like
yeah.
fascist system. So that's another reason too. Waging war on
Okay,
the Dems, liberal
okay.
tiers, etc.
Okay, okay. All right, let's equate, well, not equate, but talk about how this is related to kind of what's going on with Palantir and this surveillance database, using artificial intelligence to link all the government agencies. And really, Palantir seems to be at the epicenter of this. And with Palantir, you've got so many points of contact in terms of Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel and Elon Musk are, former PayPal founders. They're good friends. So let's talk about Palantir, and then I want to talk about Musk and Trump and whether you think that was fake.
Okay, well, first of all, Palantir, remember how you may recall how I said 2 minutes ago, like there aren't enough cops. Well,
Yeah.
this is how I think people should recognize Palantir. It's an adversarial entity that it exists to monitor and oppress you. Okay, so first of all, Palantir, what it is, not going to get into the nerdy specifics, but one of the reasons they're using it is for predictive policing. So they feed it into AI and they can say like, oh, there's going to be a crime hotspot or uptick here. There's going to be an uprising here. So you preemptively like shift police assets or like paramilitary assets to these places. Like it's going to eventually be used to be like a hurricane just devastated the eastern seaboard. Well, the material conditions of these people have degraded so much that they're going to be, primed for uprisings or like dissent. So put more cops there. And of course, the algorithm is heavily problematic, just like policing in general. So they're going to over police like black and brown neighborhoods and stuff and poorer white neighborhoods as well. That's just how it works. That's why the police were kind of created. And we can talk about that later. But in the end, this predictive policing model that's going to have all your information, including most likely if you've ever donated to a political campaign. So you're going to be like divided along political lines and put into different algorithms and stuff within the AI database. It is a force multiplier. There aren't enough cops, so they need, well, a lot of you guys may be familiar with the idea of a force multiplier. It's like things you can do to basically essentially project a bigger battlefield presence without having more soldiers. So, if you have a very mobile force that can like do like 3 operations a night instead of 2 operations, mobility is a force multiplier. Palantir is also a force multiplier. So that's how you should see it. It's a force multiplier for the state because they don't have enough cops. And if you look at what they're doing, after 2020 and the BLM movement, they started building cop cities all around the country. So the big flagship ones in Atlanta, but we got one in Texas. You have one in over there in California, Washington State. They're counterinsurgency urban warfare centers based off of Little Gaza, which is what the IDF trains on in Palestine. So like we're literally using the same template for what we do to Palestinians on our own people. And this is what we call the imperial boomerang. It's basically this really easily provable sociology premise that states forms of colonial violence and repression used overseas always are almost used immediately and replicated by police forces within the empire itself. If you accept the premise that the United States is an empire, obviously it is. But yeah, so whatever we allow to happen, again, to Palestinians is going to happen to us because Palantir, one of their big flagship test programs, has been in the occupied territories. They've developed these, Peter Thiel and Alex Karp have basically spearheaded these AI targeting algorithms called like the Gospel and Lavender that's used to kill a bunch of Palestinians. This Elbit Systems surveillance tech that's used along the apartheid wall is now monitoring Native American reservations on US soil. So it always comes back to us. And people are starting to realize, both within like the ICE abolitionist movement and the pro-Palestine movement, it's like, oh my God, this is all very connected. So we're seeing a lot of intersectionality happening, and it's not a left-right versus issue. It's not a left-right issue. It's an up-down issue, and that's what people are starting to realize.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It's an up-down issue. I'll tell you, I'm seeing a lot of these conservative social media, pundits and putzes, in my opinion, guys like Charlie Kirk and Dave Rubin and these guys, they're equating the ICE situation with Palestine. Like they're basically trying to bring the two together. Laura Loomer as well. That lady, man, she's
I mean, she's a hardcore rabid Zionist too. So
yeah. Okay. I didn't even realize she was a Zionist. She's just a lunatic, man. She is out of control. But I see them, it's almost like, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what their end game is. Is it another, like, are they trying to fire up the neocon 2001 9/11 playbook where it's another war on terror? And are they trying to make this Christians versus Muslims, or is it even bigger than that?
It's completely bigger than that. It's basically what these shills are doing, like Laura Loomer, Charlie Kirk. They basically sold out the American people. Through their information operations, because the entire premise of, the MAGA movement was like, America first, we're going to destroy the transnational globalist elite, the one world government. And then we're seeing like Trump be like, hey, if you have enough money, you can buy a golden visa, And of course, that's problematic in and of itself. But yeah, it's not about America first. We're giving all this money to Ukraine, all this money to Israel. We're arming Taiwan for ideological reasons. Why are we doing this? But they will always run political cover for the ruling class in this country. And when I say the ruling class, it's because this beef between Donald Trump and Gavin Newsom isn't really real.
I totally agree. I'm so glad you said that. Yeah.
Democrats, and this is why, as a leftist, we see centrist positions like Democrats as the biggest threat to actual political change, because they do not exist to defeat Republicans. They don't. That's why right now, a centrist Democrat is a 2001 era Bush Republican, because it keeps going further and further right politically. And whether or not you agree with like some of the social issues, it doesn't matter. They exist not to defeat Republicans. They exist to block actual left political movements from access to political power. Because the left's position is, we need our tax money spent on social programs for all Americans. Let's get some universal health care. Let's get a actual rail system so we don't have to, drive cars everywhere in, just like really basic social programs, and instead of like imperial war. And Democrats are always going to be against that, because they have the same class, the donor class that contributes to the Democratic Party also contributes to Republicans. It's just like AIPAC is not the only lobby that plays both sides. One of the biggest donors is the real estate lobby, the military industrial complex. And that's why we call the Democrats a right-wing party, because left-right politics isn't about social issues. Right is like, do you believe that capitalism is the best economic system, or do you prefer socialism or other alternatives to capitalism? But they will always serve the people who have money. And that's why they're the same party, essentially, with, differences over gender neutral bathrooms, which, Democrats will fold on every time. Now they're giving up trans rights because they're shifting further to the right. So yeah, basically, sorry, that's my large spiel about it. And I'm so fucking
I like it.
Sick of these Gavin Newsom right-wing fucking politicians pretending to put up a fight against Trump. No, you're not. You guys hang out at the same dinner parties. What are you talking about?
Yeah. I just talked the other day about how Gavin Newsom was married to Kimberly Guilfoyle, and then they got divorced, and then she got engaged to Donald Trump Jr. for 3 years. So they do run in those same circles. Let me crystallize something for myself and my audience. So when you talk about leftist and you being a leftist and the leftist policies, you're still considered a Democrat though, right? Like, would you still consider leftist as a Democrat?
You cannot be a leftist and be associated with the Democratic Party in any way. We see them as a bigger threat than right-wing conservative fascists.
Okay.
Because again, They basically make promises to working class people, soak up their vote, soak up their political power with promises that will never be realized. So this is why Bernie Sanders goes on like an fight the oligarchy tour with AOC and be like, we're going to fight for you and we're going to run for president on a joint ticket. And literally that movement, that media tour that they did is already dead.
Yeah.
It's already dead because they exist as controlled opposition to actually block progressive political movements, which again, it's not about social issues. It's about the economic system.
Would you have considered Bernie leftist in 2016? Like the Bernie Bros movement,
I'll say this. It was the closest thing we've ever had to a left-wing political movement since the 60s.
Okay.
Or 70s. But technically, no. But again, because he is he's fundamentally a Democrat.
Yeah.
The Democratic Party threw him under the bus and gave it to Hillary Clinton because she was an establishment capitalist Dem, you know. So, yeah, and ever since then, the Democratic Party broke Bernie and now he's controlled opposition again as the progressive candidate, but he's not because he'll always be on the liberal Zionist bullshit, you know, apologizing for genocide, supporting wars reluctantly. Yeah, that's basically the shtick of the Democratic Party.
Is there any politician right now that you would consider a leftist or somebody that you would back?
Yeah, I'm a huge great friends with Butch Ware, who's the Green Party candidate in the gubernatorial race for California, who's going to challenge Gavin Newsom.
Okay. All right. So Butch as a Green Party. Okay, I got it. So I need to separate leftist from Democrat in my mind.
Please do.
Okay, you got
it. Because the centrist Dems actually voiced this really debunked, stupid social theory. It's called the horseshoe theory. If you go to the right or you go too far to the left, you end up meeting in the middle, or like kind of like coming together like a horseshoe. It's basically like political theory for like adult children. It doesn't even make sense, but yeah. So
Okay, that makes sense. All right, you know what, man? I might need you to hook me up with Butch. I'd like to have him on.
He'll definitely go on.
Did you like Jill Stein then? Do you? What are your thoughts on her?
I don't know. I always had weird vibes from her. I couldn't place my finger on it. She's been an establishment Green Party figure forever. You know, I understand a lot of criticisms about her, but no, I when she was running on the Green Party ticket, I didn't endorse their ticket, their campaign, even though it was closest to, you know, the political positions that I'd like to see realized in this country. But not necessarily a fan or a detractor of Jill Stein, but yeah, I personally endorse Butch Ware for sure.
Dude, I love that you said that because that's exactly how I feel about her. Like something's always been, I like Butch. I liked Butch from the beginning, even before she picked him. But with Jill Stein, something always was off. Like she just gave me grifter vibes, and like every 4 years she pops out of nowhere and then jumps onto the topic du jour, this time being Palestine. And she really seemed to drive that. So I felt like she was totally off. What do you think of Thomas Massie?
I mean, I respect his political consistency.
Okay.
And, you know, I don't really know too much about him because, again, I mostly beef with Democrats. But no, he's been politically consistent. He seems morally principled and, you know, not a slave to corporate interests, which is refreshing. So I'm actually going to be looking more into him because, you know, I'm trying to build like more political alliances with more traditionally like anti-authoritarian conservative people. And he seems like a really good like touchstone for that.
I would tell you personally, the two guys in the Republican Party that I think you should build a relationship with is Massie and then Rand Paul.
I mean, Rand Paul's been consistent. He's never flipped his position. He's not a grifter.
Absolutely. He's not a grifter at all. And then Ron Paul is solid as well. Okay. We've talked all about, with the ICE stuff in LA, you think this is going to get worse? Like, it's going to get, I think so too.
No, I think if the parade, Trump's military parade gets, disrupted, wink, not gonna, I think it's gonna be a big temper tantrum thing. And the more and more that they feel like they're losing control of the situation, the more they're going to try to ramp down on violence.
Yeah.
And I'm actually surprised it hasn't been worse because Republican administrations are generally more trigger happy with the cops. But of course, I got pepper sprayed 5 times under the Biden administration over the Palestine stuff and arrested in the Senate. And I watched my friends get the shit beat out of them by the same cops that are now following the same kind of orders given by the Trump administration. So it's just more of the same thing. But yeah, they're gonna ramp down on violence as the material conditions of working class people in America continue to degrade. The big beautiful bill is the single biggest grift in American history over the past 20 years. You're not going to get richer. Life's not going to become more affordable. And as the material conditions of us degrade as citizens, what are they going to do? They're going to ramp down on police control, Palantir, the surveillance state. That's why the big beautiful bill is cutting Medicaid and other social programs, but funding the police where they can hire 18,000 more federal officers. So they're going to take money away from you, your tax dollars, and put it into the police and into the military. The military budget's going up, but no social programs for you. Your tax dollars don't go to universal health care. They go to literally your own oppression by the state.
Yeah, that's insane.
And as people start to realize this, people are going to start to get more violent, more upset. They're going to start joining together because people are like, I don't give a shit about your social politics, man. The house is on fire. I need air. We need water. And all they can do, because the only addiction that they really have is greed, more. They want all of your shit. The ruling class throughout history wants all the best land. They want the best herds. They're coming for your shit and they're not going to stop. And they're just going to use the police as mechanisms to keep you down. And this is just, I don't even really need to make a social argument about it, a socialist argument about it, because it's just that throughout history.
Are there a lot of guys, a lot of veterans that feel this way? Like, is the veteran community split?
Okay, so there are 3 veteran archetypes. There's kind of like the centrist position, which is like, I did my time. I hate the military industrial complex. I'm just trying to live my life. Leave me alone. And then you have the ones that double down, because they can't comprehend, that they sacrificed their youth and buried their friends for the sake of imperialist lies that, really double down on the terrorism narrative and, the police state narrative. It's like, we're fighting an existential threat for the sovereignty of America against like Islamic fascism, which doesn't exist. But those are the MAGA veterans. And then you have more people on the left, or at least the anti-war platform, that are kind of like, we basically fought and died so to make rich men richer. And that kind of brings them more into left-wing politics, because all left-wing means is you question the economic system. It's not necessarily about like trans rights or whatever. It's inherently about the economics system that sent us to war for extractive oil and other minerals and, strategic dominance. So I guess, you've got the ones on the authoritarian right that love the boot, love licking it, love, slurping up all the bubbles. And then you have more left-wing politics in the veteran community. And of course, there's centrists. I mean, I know a lot of like Democratic voters that are going to show up to the veterans protest just because they're like, hey, shouldn't have an authoritarian North Korean military parade down Independence Avenue in DC. But yeah, it's a whole spectrum. But those are kind of like the 3 archetypes, I'd say.
Okay. You're a believer in false flags, aren't you? Like, do you
generally? Well, here's the thing about my stance with conspiracy theories. I don't really spend too much time talking about whether or not it happened.
Yeah.
Because the performative effect is the same. Whether or not Al-Qaeda did 9/11 or it was an inside job, we were still going to use it as justification to invade 5 different countries and kill 2 million people.
Yeah.
It doesn't. So I do have my own personal beliefs, but I don't speak them publicly because the performative effect is the same. Like, would our government do that? Yeah. Would the Israeli government do that? Of course, but the performative effect is generally the same. But yes, false flags do happen. The FBI has a long and storied history of, co-opting mentally ill people into radical action to justify more police control,
Yeah.
Crazy. So no, I mean, they have happened. What extent and how premeditated it was is stuff we generally never know. We'll never know. But yeah, in principle, I'm not a non-believer.
the MK Ultra and all that stuff. I mean, That's legit stuff, right? Like what you
Yeah.
just said about co-opting people, like messing with their mental state of mind to do things. I
Yeah,
mean,
I mean,
that
that was the whole premise of COINTELPRO, the FBI, the joint FBI and CIA program to break activism during the time of the Vietnam War. They would, insert false flag operatives within movements and, do crazy shit like violent stuff that, those activist movements weren't actually doing in order to instigate a police crackdown or justify a police crackdown. Yeah, we've been doing this since the early
yeah.
days.
Yeah, yeah. That's that hippie movement in the Vietnam War, and then Charles Manson. And there's that book Chaos by I forget who wrote that, but the book Chaos that talks about how Charles Manson was basically a way to scare the hell out of everybody through the concept of radicalized hippies in order to shut down the Vietnam protests.
Right. And one of the reasons why they wanted that and why he always kind of looks like an op is because in the wake of the Vietnam War, and all the government propaganda that went into making people forget that the Vietnam backlash was an intersectional movement that again wasn't left right, it was up down, it was workers unions, like Marxist Leninist Black Panthers, conservative men who are like, why can't I send my son to college, why does he have to go die for like the rich man's war? But they all made this like in an overlap with like the civil rights movement and like the environmental movement and stuff like that, and it was completely intersectional across America. And that was why it was such a threat to the ruling class. And so that's why all of this union busting happened, because unions were shutting down weapons factories, merchant marine ships sending weapons to Vietnam were having mutinies aboard it. So break the powers of workers unions after that. Also do a bunch of revisionist propaganda to blame it all on the hippies who were crazy, like Charles Manson. Don't talk about how it was an intersectional movement across all of America, because that's what they don't want. They want to separate, to create, this culture war between like the left and the right. There's no war but class war. Okay. Like when I hear people like really polarized and believing like two sides that can't ever work together, it's like, good. I mean, looks like the CIA has done its job pretty well.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
totally agree. I totally agree. All right, let me see. Any updates on your thoughts on what's going on Israel-Palestine? Is that just going to continue indefinitely? It really is, right? Like they're just stringing it out. What is Hamas anymore? Who's fighting there? Like it's like they've
Oh,
killed
they're
all
very
the
active. Yeah.
they are?
Oh, yeah, they're. I mean, their tactics right now have shifted from like direct engagement, like ambushes. I mean, they still happen, or like sniper operations, but yeah, the entire battle space in Gaza that Israel occupies is completely riddled with like booby traps and IEDs, and they've already lost 20 soldiers, probably more, because they have a gag order on that since since Israel broke the ceasefire. So yeah, and also according to the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, our own reporting, Hamas has basically reconstituted itself in terms of numbers, like back to an October 6th stance, because Israel has killed so many families that they've created a whole new acronym called Wounded Child, No Surviving Families. So yeah, Hamas has plenty of recruits and they're still active. So Israel basically can't win unless they kill or displace every person in Gaza, which is what they're trying to do. And now it's bald face. And what's kind of shocking to me, like I knew how bad the evil empire was, having fought for it, but I thought like this level of brutality existed like in the history books, like the genocides that were responsible, that they happened in a bygone time, in the before times, but now it's happening in real time. I was like, wow, we really haven't changed. There's nothing we won't take or kill in order to make the rich people richer, because that's what
Yeah,
it is.
I agree, man. I agree. Do you think there's any chance of like a 9/11 type event? Heck, maybe at the stupid parade or something that like would basically give Trump the green light to just go crazy on Muslims, Mexicans, Iran, who the hell knows? Like
Socialists,
socialists.
yeah, the
Yeah, yeah,
radical left,
yeah.
and the woke right. I guess they're calling the people on the right who criticize like putting Israel first woke now.
They're
Uh,
calling those guys woke now. That's
yeah,
hilarious.
yeah. So it's a whole thing. The ideological fragmentation that's happening right now is pretty crazy. I will say, if there is some massive attack at the military parade,
Yeah.
I'm going to be like, I'm generally not like a false flag guy until I have like something that skeezes me out, but instantly I'm just gonna be like, yeah, okay. Saw that coming.
Exactly, man. Exactly. All right. Anything else, man? I know you're pressed for time. Anything else you want to talk about? Oh, let me ask you one
No, I
thing.
got plenty of time if you want to keep this
Okay,
going. So
let me ask you one thing. And you don't have to answer if you don't want to, and I can always cut it out. But what's the deal with Scott Ritter?
you saw that spicy?
I did. I
Yeah.
did. I was like, God damn, he got zesty on Scott Ritter.
Yeah, because he put this post out after, you know, that very bizarre attack on the 2 Israeli junior diplomats in
Yeah.
DC. Was it like 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago?
Yep.
Yeah, he said he basically was condemning that act of violence. And I'd have to pull up the whole tweet because, of course, it wasn't. Yeah, I mean, but he's like, now we've lost all chance for peace. And he's obsessed with this term peace, you know? But we don't believe in the term peace. We believe in the term justice, because what is peace? Peace is violence inherent to the system. Peace is everyone's just quiet enough while we tax you more, take all your shit, deny you health care so you just die.
Yeah.
I mean, so we don't talk about, like, peace is about maintaining the violence of the status quo, you know, and just not questioning it. So his obsession with peace, it basically makes it impossible for him to engage with real issues in a meaningful way, to address the underlying currents and reasons why this is happening in the first place. And so when you say, like, we want peace in Palestine, peace means occupation. Peace means ethnic cleansing.
Yeah.
Peace means, you know, all the things that they were doing before October 7th, just the Palestinians aren't fighting back.
Yeah, exactly. I'm surprised he would even say that, because the concept of having peace goes directly against what the military industrial complex is all about, which is not having peace and having a boogeyman and having an enemy and having a reason to get, you know, 800 billion to $1 trillion in the budget.
Yeah.
Like,
You know,
they don't want that to go away.
Yeah. Mike Ferner, Vietnam veteran, one of the founders of Veterans for Peace, says, you know, we are run by madmen arsonists who start fires across the globe to enrich their corporate masters. Yeah.
Dude, that's pretty solid. That's pretty solid. Is that the guy that went off on George W? No, that's Mike Prisner. Is there
No, that's Mike Prisner. Yeah.
Mike Prisner. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. That was a great speech. All right, listen,
another
man.
dirty leftist.
Yeah, these dirty leftists, dude. I'm kind of getting down with the dirty leftists.
Well,
now
you know, I mean, again,
better.
what I try to explain to people is, like, we basically agree on the same stuff. And, you know, one of our favorite quotes is, you know, you go far enough left, you stop becoming a liberal, and you get your guns back too.
Yeah,
so that's also
totally.
fun.
I've just been always trying to, like, figure out, I guess, famous or popular people that I could use as a reference for leftist. I'm trying to think, like, who.
Okay, so Mike Prisner, you brought him up. He's married to Abby Martin, and they both run the Empire Files, and that's it's a great leftist podcast that deals with like
I love
anti-imperial. Yeah.
Abby's a beast, man. She is a beast. She goes at it. What do you think of guys, the guys from the Young Turks, like Cenk Uygur and then Anna Kasparian? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
They've gone straight on the grift status, you know.
Interesting.
No, I mean, Cenk he's a centrist. You know, sometimes he says some actual progressive things, but at the end of the day, he's just trying to make money, which is cool. You have to have it to survive, but also, I don't really deal with them. I stopped listening to them years ago when they started. I don't know. And then Anna Kasparian, she's gone like into MAGA land in order to attract more voters, and we kind of have this joke like, the more blonde her hair gets, the more conservative her politics. But
that's funny. That's funny.
And of course, not conservative like in a good way where you actually like want to limit government and stuff like that. In the grifter way.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, Abby, Empire Files is a great reference. Obviously, my podcast is a pretty good reference too.
Your podcast is solid. Who's the guy that you do that with? Mark? Is that
Mark Wayne? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's his background?
He grew up as a really far right-wing Christian evangelical Zionist. He actually studied in Israel and now he's a black flag anarchist. And what that means in terms of left-wing politics, it means you're like an anti-authoritarian socialist. Where
Wow.
and we beef a lot with the hardcore like authoritarian communists who are like, Stalin didn't go far enough. So there's a lot of ideological infighting on the left. But anyways, that's Mark's background.
Okay. Do you know that guy Daryl Cooper?
I think I follow him.
Like Joe Rogan's had him on, and then Tucker Carlson had him on. He's got some really, he's supposed to do incredibly in-depth stuff. And then he's got some really interesting thoughts on World War II and how World War II, actually, I'd love to get your thoughts on World War II and whether that was like another situation that, quite frankly, was so different than what our history books have taught. The perfect example being Churchill is not a good guy. Churchill probably was like the worst of the bunch, and he goes down that path and a few others. Do you have any thoughts on World War II?
Well, look, Winston Churchill was one of the most beloved figures in British politics during World War II. He was an absolute piece of shit. Okay, so
that's right. Exactly. The fact that he was so beloved is why nowadays my red flag goes up and be like, okay, that could be shady.
Well, he was incredibly he grew up fighting in northwestern India against the Pathans, which are essentially the Pashtun tribes, and he hated Hindus, incredibly racist against them. So basically, my favorite Winston Churchill quote, which just basically proves he's a massive piece of shit. He diverted all of this food from Bengal, which is like one of the bread baskets of India, East India, to the European front to feed, the war effort. And of course, there was a massive famine where about like 10 million people died because they were taking all the food from India. And when he was told that there was a famine in Bengal, he's like, famine in Bengal? Then why isn't Gandhi dead yet? Because Gandhi was a massive problem. So yeah. Anyways, Winston Churchill, great guy. He's a huge dick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other reason why I think he's probably not what we've been sold is guys like Douglas Murray are huge fans of his. Do you know who that guy is? Douglas Murray. He was just on Dave Smith. He was on Rogan debating Dave Smith, and he just got humiliated.
Yeah, the insufferable neocon British asshole.
Yes,
right?
Yes, exactly.
It's like people think I'm smart because I sound like an aristocrat from 1850.
Yeah, exactly. All right, man. Good stuff, brother. Good stuff. All right. Keep us posted on what's going on. I will put your podcast and your Instagram in the show links because I think everybody needs to follow you because I thoroughly enjoy it.
Oh, thank you so much. It's always great to be on. And I guess we can check in another few months and see what other insanity is going on if you ever need a left-wing ambassador.
You're like my official left guy. I've got a left guy.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Keep calling a spade like Greg Stoker does. Colonial Podcast. I'm going to put everything there. And a Colonial Outcast. What's the name of it again?
It's called Colonial Outcasts, the anti-imperialist podcast that your problematic MAGA uncle will absolutely hate.
Fantastic. All right, hang on the line. All right, everybody. We'll catch up with you here soon.
This episode was brought to you by the new book, Deep Shallow Dive Into You, available now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble in hardcover and paperback. Don't forget to sign up for our new mailing list on our website at deepshallowdive.com.